Welcome to Run, Jump, Stomp, a podcast about games because we needed another. Speaking of needing another, there's some feed issues. If you have followed me on Twitter, you probably already know that I foolishly assumed that I knew what I was doing, got impatient waiting to find out if I knew what I was doing, and broke the podcast feed. So now what you see on iTunes or whatever podcatcher you're using is that there are two feeds for Run, Jump, Stomp. There's one which, for some reason, is tagged as explicit. I don't know why. I always try and keep it clean. And then there's another one, which is the new feed, which is not tagged as explicit. That's going to be the new feed from now on, and if you are listening to this, you probably have already figured it out. But let anybody else that you know that listens to this know that they can find the feed easily by going to the website. That's right, there's a silver lining to all this. Well, it happened when I was building our website. It is runjumpstomp.com, and that's the silver lining. You can go right there, and right at the very, very top, there's a black bar across the top of the website where you can click, and you can find the feed so that you can download the podcast into your podcatcher. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, it is May 5th, 2015. I'm Bill, your host, and this week we're going to be talking about some free DLC from Dragon Age, which is mind-blowing. Sega is bailing on E3. Nintendo finally responds to Amiibo shortages. And Silent Hills has been canceled. People are going a little crazy. The ban hammer is real, and so an update to a very, very old game. All that plus the long play and wish listed coming up on this episode of Run, Jump, Stomp. Thanks for listening. All right. The first piece of information is about a video game that I played an extremely long time ago, Everquest. Everquest is one of the first MMOs that I played. The actual first MMO that I played was Ultima Online. My friends told me about it, and I said to them, if you think that I'm paying $10 a month to play a video game, then you're out of your mind. When they finally showed me the game, and I got hooked. And then later on, EverQuest came out, and I could not imagine something being more immersive than Ultima Online, but EverQuest definitely was more immersive, and it was one of the greatest games ever made. The game was hard, it was unforgiving, immersive. I already said it was incredibly fun. I'm not the only one that thinks so. There's people who work at they have a site called Project 1999, and the link is in the show notes. And they would probably agree with me on this. They're running an almost vanilla EverQuest server that you can log into and play with the original rules. They are doing expansions, but they're doing them slowly. And currently they're up to the Kunark expansion, which, for those of you that don't know, is the one that added the Ixar, which were like a race of lizard people, and a new continent. Up until now, this project has always been under fear of getting shut down by Sony Online Entertainment. However, Sony recently sold the rights to EverQuest to Daybreak Studios. A lot of people were really worried about what was going to happen with this. A lot of people also assumed that this meant doom and gloom for not only the other games that Sony was currently working on, but they figured it's for sure now somebody's going to shut down 1999. Well, this post from Rogin. He's in charge of the site. He posted this. He said, "It's been a busy year for Project 1999, and we have some exciting news we've been really anxious to share with all of you. As some of you may be aware, in the past there's been both confusion and concern over the status of Project 1999. We have recently entered into a written agreement with Daybreak Game Company, LLC, that formally recognizes Project 1999 as a fan-based, not-for-profit, classic EverQuest emulation project. The agreement establishes the guidelines that we as a project must follow, but it will allow us to continue to update the game without risk of legal repercussions." If you want to read the rest of the post, definitely check out the link in the show notes. What does this mean? Well, it means that if you want, you can check out what we played back in 1999 when EverQuest first came out. It was an absolutely brilliant game, and I am definitely interested in going back and trying it out. My first character was a dwarf warrior. He starved to death waiting for a boat. You are hungry. You are thirsty. And then you would take damage. Later on, I ended up falling off that boat at one point in my EverQuest career and swam for about an hour trying to get to the next continent before I gave up and let myself drown. I remember trying to sneak through a city in Freeport. I was a dark elf. And the dark elves in Freeport were kill on sight, or as we would say, KOS. So that means if the guards of the city saw you, because it was a good city, they would attack you because dark elves are evil. So, trying to sneak through the city to get from one side to the other, only to find out that there was a maze of tunnels through the sewers that you could go through to check out, to get across to the other city. Or not the other city, but the other side of the city. It was a really immersive game, and so many really great experiences were I was able to have in that game, and I'm really very interested in going back and trying it again. I've tried to play EverQuest since, but it's been updated so much, it just doesn't feel like the same game that it used to. It seems like every week, Valve is getting into some kind of PR nightmare. This week, the story is that Valve is giving developers, and all developers, the ability to ban a user from the game. Now, normally I don't really have a problem with this. I think it cuts down on cheaters. It's going to generally get rid of it'll clean up the community and get rid of the jerky people. In Guild Wars 2, when the game first came out, the developers came down really hard on cheaters and trolls in the game. They closed accounts and kicked people out. When people complained about it, they showed everyone why they kicked the person out, which I thought was fantastic. It really drove the community, or steered the community, in the right direction at the beginning of the game. And to this day, if you log into Guild Wars 2, I really think that it has one of the best communities for an MMO. So, why am I talking about this? It's because Valve is going to give this power to ban somebody to any developer. And I'm not positive, but I think the reason that this bothers me is I don't trust all developers as much as I trust ArenaNet. What if I give a game a bad review on my podcast, and then they decide, all right, you know what? I'm going to lock you out of the game. You didn't like it anyway. So I could really see how, on one hand, giving developers a way to clean up their community is a good thing, but I can also see how it's going to be abused. Another thing I wonder is, how does this work for a game that doesn't use a centralized server? So if I have, let's say I have Terraria, and I want to make my own server, which is perfectly plausible. Can Relogic, which is the company that makes Terraria, can they just ban me if they decide to? Does that mean that my game no longer works, or just that I can't connect to their servers? Does a ban just really just remove the game from my Steam library effectively. Like maybe I can still see it in the library, but if I go to click it and play it, it's not there, or it doesn't work. It really feels like a misstep from Valve. I think that they need to do, if they're going to do this, then there needs to be some kind of oversight. So if I get banned for something, or if somebody gets banned for something, they have some kind of recourse to come back and say, now wait a second, I didn't do what you're saying I did. Can you prove it? And then if they can't prove it, then they could reinstate the account. What do you think about the ban hammer? Do you think that Valve should hand the ban hammer out to anybody that wants it? Let me know on Twitter or in email. Hills, which is, it sounds weird to say it like that. I'm used to saying Silent Hill. Silent Hills is the latest in a sequel, or is the latest sequel to the Silent Hill series, and it was coming out on PlayStation, and the PlayStation Store had a playable teaser, so you could go through and check out a small portion of the game. Since that happened, Konami confirmed that they canceled Silent Hills. So now, first off, I don't really care. I'm not a huge fan of horror games, and it's not because I don't like being scared, but I don't really like excessive gore. You could call me squeamish if you want, but a lot of times it's excessive, and it's for no other reason than to be excessive. I do like a good scary game, though, as long as it's not like overly gory. Like I would say a really good example of a scary game done right would be BioShock. I didn't think that was excessively disgusting. Another really good example would be one that I'm currently playing, and you can check it out on my YouTube channel. I'm playing through Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is really fantastic. Although, you know what? That's not a good example because it's very gory. What's the name? Alan Wake. Alan Wake is a great example of a game that's scary without being disgusting. That's all beside the point. This game did have me a little bit interested. It's a collaboration between Hideo Kojima. He made Metal Gear, and Guillermo, I can't say this guy's name, Guillermo del Toro. He made a movie called Pan's Labyrinth, which if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. It's fantastic. So these two were working together, and then they even got Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl on The Walking Dead, which for a survival horror game, that's a perfect thing for them to use, or a perfect actor for them to use in this kind of game, because he's been in, it just works perfectly. They were even going to have his face in there, not just voice act, but it was going to look like him too. This game most likely got canceled because Konami and Kojima can't seem to figure out, I don't know, they're having some kind of power struggle. The way I look at it, I think Konami's making a huge mistake. Kojima sells a lot of games. Like the Metal Gear series are huge money makers, and I'm not a big fan of the Metal Gear games. I wouldn't say it's because I don't like them, it's just I haven't played them very much. But everybody swears by them and says that they're fantastic, and that a lot of people lay the accolades at the feet of Kojima as a great game designer. So they hire this guy who's a great game designer, and they say, make this game, and they're working together with a great director, and they're working together with a great actor, and they put all these things together in a genre that's fantastically popular right now. Everybody who played the teaser said it was fantastic, and then Konami jumps in there and says, you know what, I hate money, so we're going to have to cancel this. And here's the twist, which makes this even more interesting. After they pulled the game off the PlayStation Store, people started selling their PS4s on eBay because they had the demo on it, and they've been selling for over $1,000. Some even went as high as $1,500. Now, I cannot imagine spending that kind of money for a demo, but hey, who am I to judge? Nintendo has been having all kinds of issues with their Toys to Life figures, called Amiibo, which is, has the double I from me. So Nintendo's Amiibo line, lots of people really, really want them. They can't find them. It seems like Nintendo of America really, really underestimated the demand for the product, especially because the figures look great. Some of the figures, when they first came out, like they would have like a yellow stand, because when they decided to do this, it was very, very late in the development of Smash Brothers. And because it was so late, they decided, let's just use the trophy figure from Smash Brothers, and we'll make one of each character. Now, in Smash Brothers, some of those trophy figures are in really cool looking poses, but those really cool looking poses are really difficult to replicate in a real physical figure. So some of them didn't look too good at first, but Nintendo's been improving them. Their problem is they just can't seem to make enough of them. Well, actually, you know what? That's not true either, because availability is only a problem in the North American market. So it seems like North America, or Nintendo of America, they underestimated the demand. And in addition, Nintendo of America partnered with brick and mortar retailers for exclusive Amiibos. Now, I hate that they did this, but I almost think that they didn't have a choice. They got to buy that shelf space, or they got to get these retailers to give them the shelf space. And Nintendo doesn't have a whole lot of clout these days, especially with the Wii U doing as bad as it is. Also, go buy one because it's a fantastic console. But the Wii U's not doing well, and they're having trouble getting the shelf space. They probably had to agree to letting these retailers have exclusives. Now, the scarcity and the exclusives make it very hard to get the Amiibo that you want, which in turn motivates scalpers to buy them by the truckload, and then they sell them on eBay for ridiculous prices. Up until now, Nintendo's been silent about this, almost like it's not even happening, like they were oblivious. So earlier this week, they gave a statement. They posted it on their Facebook page, and you can see that in the link in the show notes. They said, "We appreciate the enthusiasm that our fans continue to show toward Amiibo. Sales for the product have exceeded expectations. We understand how frustrating it can be at times if consumers are unable to find certain figures, and we apologize for that. We're trying to meet the demands of our fans and consumers by increasing the amount of Amiibo we manufacture and ship to retail." See, now right there, I don't think that manufacturing is the problem, even though that they're saying it is. Because if you look at pictures that people post on the Amiibo subreddit, people have loads of the ones that are super rare here in America. There's like just a walls full of them over in Japan and Europe. They've got them all over the place. It's only in America that we're having trouble finding them. And back to the quote. They say, "We may continue to see consumer demand outpace supply levels for certain characters at times." That's kind of hard to read. "But we will do our best to prevent that from happening." All right, so they're saying that things are going to stay the same is what they're saying. They're wording it so that it sounds like an apology and that they know that it's a problem and that they're going to fix it, but it seems like they're saying, you know the way that it's been? It's going to stay that way, and you just better get used to it. Then they say, pardon me. Then they say, as our library of Amiibo, that's how you pluralize Amiibo, is Amiibo, continues to grow, some figures will be easier to find than others. We are constantly looking for the opportunity to reissue Amiibo and are already making plans to bring back some currently out-of-stock Amiibo figures. Stay tuned for details. All right, so Nintendo wants to make it easier for us to get what we want. The problem is they need to stop partnering with these brick and mortar stores and just sell it from Nintendo.com. Do what Apple does. When Apple brings out a new phone and it's hard to get, you go to their website, you say, you say, I want the new phone. And they say, okay, give me your money and I'll give it to you as soon as I can. Probably. And then they tell you a time like 2 months down the line. So if Nintendo did this, you go to Nintendo.com, you spend your $12. They say, okay, we're going to make you a Marth Amiibo, and it's not going to get to you until June, but you will have one. As soon as we make that one, we're going to ship it to you, and you're going to get it. And that would make people really, really happy, because then the scalpers wouldn't be able to buy all of the Marth Amiibos and sell them all online. It just seems like pushing them through the brick and mortar stores is only irritating Nintendo's customers and lining the pockets of scalpers. So I don't know. I have some Amiibos. I bought them because my son thinks they're cool and he really, really likes them. But they don't really interest me. I don't want to have a bunch of figures all over my house. But I do like looking at them. I think that they're really cool. I just don't think that Nintendo is doing the right thing here. The big surprise for this week is that Sega is bailing on E3. They're actually leaving E3 behind. I think it could easily be argued, and Nintendo fans will tell you that Nintendo was the best, and Sega fans will tell you that Sega was the best. But when I was a kid, there was the console wars. Those are like in the early '80s, they had the soda wars between Pepsi and Coke. In the late 80s, early 90s, they had the console wars between Sega and Nintendo. And nobody really knows who had the upper hand during that 16-bit era of the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. Now, Sega made lots of mistakes, especially after that 16-bit era. They made that Sega CD, which seemed like a great idea. I had one, by the way. I loved it. I didn't know any better. And then Sega ditched it and said, oh, you know what? We'll try the Sega 32X instead. So then they brought out the Sega 32X, and I bought that. And then they dropped it because it wasn't incredibly popular. So then they moved on, and they had the... Oh, what was the name of the console after? The Sega... Not Saturn. Was it the Saturn? I think it was the Sega Saturn. So then they had the Sega Saturn out. And the Sega Saturn, man, the graphics looked amazing, and I bought it. And then they dropped it and moved on to the next thing, which was the Dreamcast. And by all accounts, everyone says the Dreamcast is a fantastic console, even with that super weird controller. But then they dropped that too. And after they just kept doing all of these mistakes, they would put something out and then not support it. And people stopped taking them seriously. And then the Sonic games that were coming out, they finally got out of the console market and said, we're going to make our games for every console. And everybody was like, oh man, this is going to be cool. I'm going to be able to play Sonic on whatever console I want. And that's what people wanted. They thought it was great. And they were right. It was great. Except... it was a great move but the Sonic games were just awful. They just were not good. So after all of these mistakes that Sega has been making, it's harder and harder to take them seriously. You just can't take them seriously anymore. And now, in a recent press release, they said, we're not coming to E3. How the mighty have fallen, it seems. Here's the quote. It says, over the next months, Sega of America will be focusing on the restructure and relocation to Southern California, and we have decided not to attend E3 with our own booth this year. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that they're probably not going to have, or not probably, they're not going to have their own booth. But my guess is they'll still have some people there at the show, probably partnered with other booths. They said, we are concentrating our efforts for some of these major announcements after our relocation. So we should look for press releases after E3. And then they said at the very end, they said, instead we will be collaborating with our various business partners for this year's E3 show. So Sega won't have their own booth, but they'll just be part of other presentations probably. My question is, they're talking about these big titles that are supposed to come out after E3. What are these big titles? Are they going to avoid the Sonic games and push those over to mobile? The most recent Sonic game that was on a console was Sonic Boom, I think, and it was pretty much an abysmal failure. Everybody, I don't want to say everybody, that's hyperbolic. Many people have said that it was a very bad game, and it was a failure in many ways. Alien Isolation, that was quite a hit. It seems like the Sonic team isn't getting it done, but whoever worked on Alien Isolation for Sega, they did a great job, both critically and financially. It was really popular. I don't think that we've seen the last of Sonic, but what I'm wondering is he going to be another big console game? Or are they going to make more endless runner styles games that Sega has been releasing on like iOS and Android? I'm shocked that they aren't coming to E3. Well, not shocked. I'm disappointed that they're not coming to E3. I just want to know, what are we going to see from them? Are they actually going to go away? That's the question. The last story for today is Dragon Age is getting some free DLC. This is really surprising. I mean, this is coming from EA, which, if you ask most gamers, is the money-grubbingest, deep-pocketed weasels of the gaming industry. I mean, they are synonymous. I think John Oliver said it really well when he was talking about Pearson standardized testing on last week tonight. He said that they're a lot like Time Warner Cable. You've either never had an interaction with them and don't care, or you absolutely hate them. And I think that that's a lot how many gamers view EA. They either don't care because they don't buy any of their games, or they don't like them at all because they've been burned by them. Now, Dragon Age, if you haven't played it, it's a lot like Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter Nights, except the camera's in a different location, so it's not like top-down. The camera's behind your character instead. And it has like the pausable controls. Now, that was the first one, and I haven't played the second one or the third one, but the third one is supposed to be fantastic. I think it even got Game of the Year last year. I don't know from who. They just announced that available today, you can download some free DLC. There's 2 packages. The first one is called Dragon Slayer, and the second one is called Black Emporium. The Dragon Slayer part is multiplayer focused, and the Black Emporium is single player focused. So they added a multiplayer for the people who really like that, and then they added some new characters and a store, or an in-game store to the game for people who really like the soloist kind of play. All in all, I have to say, well done, EA, and that's not something you'll hear me say often. This week on the long play, I actually didn't get a whole lot of time to play games this week. I was working on getting the website up and running, and then I broke the podcast feed, so I was fighting with that a bunch. So I didn't get a lot of time to play games. But yesterday was May 4th, Star Wars Day, for May the 4th be with you. And I played Roll20 last night, playing Edge of the Empire, which is a tabletop board game. But I was playing it with some friends over the internet using Roll20. If you've never played Roll20, I highly recommend that you check it out. Roll20 basically gives you a virtual tabletop for you to play these tabletop style pen and paper games over the internet with your friends. As I get older, I know that the opportunities that I have to get together with my friends, they happen less and less often. So playing these games online is really, really a good way for you to get these experiences. We played a very fantastic adventure that was written by one of the GM of the group, where we were a band that had to infiltrate a location in order to steal something. So we were posing as a rock band in Star Wars. It was really, really cool. And Roll20 is free. It doesn't have as many features if you don't pay for it, but you can definitely use it for free and have lots of fun. So check out Roll20, I think it's .net or .com. I can't remember which one it is. Check the link in the show notes, and I'll make sure that I link it there. This week on Wishlisted, I'm looking at getting Star Wars X-Wing Special Edition in honor of Star Wars Day. I put a lot of hours into the flight sim, space combat sim games from LucasArts back when they were new. I had a joystick for my computer. It wasn't a fancy one, but it was just had like 2 buttons on it. But man, I spent a lot of time playing X-Wing and TIE Fighter, and even X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. Recently on Steam, Star Wars has been releasing, LucasArts has been releasing Star Wars, those flight sim games from when I was a kid. And they're pretty cheap. I think it's like $23 and you get the whole package, which is all of them. X-Wing Special Edition, I'll just read you the synopsis and you can decide if it's something you're interested in or not. The Old Republic is gone. The Senate has been abolished. The Jedi Knights have been exterminated. Now the Emperor seeks to crush the last remaining opposition. Against the overwhelming might of the Empire stands a small but growing rebel alliance. Scattered resistance groups are uniting, but what is needed now most are starfighter pilots. Will you join their struggle to end the tyranny and become the hero of the rebellion? Now, that's really cool, and I definitely want to pick it up, but there's also TIE Fighter. TIE Fighter, you are doing the same thing, but you're on the other side, and you can work your way up to becoming the Emperor's hand and as a really cool TIE Fighter pilot. And there's lots of different ships that you can play, and you control which way the shields go. It's a fantastic game. Now, if you've played it, let me know on Twitter or email if you've played these new ones and used like a twin stick controller to use it, because I don't have a joystick anymore, and I'm not going to go out and buy a joystick for an extremely old game. That being said, if it can control well on like an Xbox controller hooked up to a computer, that's definitely something I'd be interested in, because I had a lot of fun with these games, and I think that it would be great to be able to sit back and play. I don't think mouse and keyboard would be a good way to play these games. So let me know if you recommend playing it with a controller or not. Well, that is the show for this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you have anything that you'd like to let me know about, you can, of course, email me. That's runjumpstomp@gmail.com. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter at runjumpstomp. And now you can even go to the website, runjumpstomp.com, and get a hold of me through there. I also will be posting news articles and reviews right on the website, and usually it kind of gives me my show notes for the week, is what I might talk about that week. I'll pick a few articles that I've read about and put those up there, and then that's what I'll talk about in the podcast. But thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again.